When I was younger, I thought getting jacked would solve all of my health and wellness problems. And when it didn't, I felt lied to. I felt like being fit and healthy and jacked were all the same thing. But I was wrong. I'm now 10 years on the other side of that journey. I've coached national champions. I've coached hundreds of everyday people to live better, get stronger, feel healthier, all that. And I even coached my mum. Do you know how hard it is to get someone in your family to listen to your advice? We've been doing it for months and she is more confident than ever. So today I'm going over 4 important principles that I wish I was told when I started my training journey. Things that would have saved me years of fluffing around and things that I know that will keep me aging well into the future. Not just getting old, but staying fit, strong, healthy, well into the future. So watching this video could be the cheapest health insurance that you've ever come across. I'm Lachie Freestone, let's dive in. When I was 20 and competing as a discus, shot put, hammer, javelin thrower, it's not unheard of for a thrower to squat 200 kilos in their training. It's pretty common, even juniors. But one day when I asked my training buddy to take a photo of me squatting, and I said, take a photo when I'm down the bottom, he took this. And I'm like, I said down the bottom, he's like, that was it. I'm like, what? And at the time, I had just taken my training load back to about 2 throws per session because that is all my knees could handle. I had to stop running, stop jumping, stop all the plyos, all the stuff that you would think an elite athlete should be able to do any day of the week. I was not doing because my body just couldn't handle it. And when I saw this squat, I'm like, why am I so obsessed on the weight when my body feels like shit? And so that was almost a turning point for me when I was like, I can't just keep doing 4 or 6 throws a week to compete against these other people doing dozens and dozens or maybe hundreds of throws every week. I just can't keep up with that. So I was almost out on my own trying to figure out what is wrong with my knees. And I went and got them checked out and got told I had a bilateral meniscus tear in both knees. And they said that I needed surgery like ASAP if I was ever going to run again. And I remember this part of me thinking, nah, that cannot be right. And so I started my journey. It started with going through the layers of different joints and building their ability up in isolation so that when they are asked to perform in a complex compound movement pattern, that I know that there are no weak links in that chain anymore. I recently squatted 180 kilos high bar to depth without belt or shoes or straps or wraps or any of the assistance that people use. And for some people it's like, oh, 4 plates high bar. We see that all over Instagram. It's like, yeah, but I came from a place where this was my squat. Like I remember being 5 and my dad trying to show me how to squat and my hips hurt and I couldn't do it. He's like, oh, just sit down deep. And I'm like, I couldn't. Like, so 180 high bar, like, might not be that impressive in the scheme of things, but for me, I'm really proud of it. And it's not just being proud, but it's being confident in my ability to move that way. You think I have any problems like picking up anything around the house ever? And so the most important mindset shift that I had here is like, what am I really trying to train for in the gym? But we should be a little bit more kind to our body and just being like, oh, this thing is holding me back. How can I make sure that it's not going to get worse as I get older? So here I've only talked about squatting, but I promise you that the rest of my body needed this TLC as well. So here's a simple 3-step framework that I use with myself, with my clients, and it's just my own take on a piece of advice I once heard. It's probably saved me years of trying to do random rehab training, which was, if you want to avoid getting injured, train like you're trying to get injured. But do it with 3 things in mind: with less speed, with less load, and less range of motion. So if we're going to work on our weak link and we want to make a joint move better / become more capable by being able to handle or transmit more force, here's how we do it. First, remove all 3. You end up with static contractions, and this has been shown to be one of the best things for getting your tendons strong. Not only that, but it shows your body and mind that the position that you are in is now comfortable. It's like expanding the comfort zone within your unconscious. So whether it's holding isometrics or static stretching, It just means no load, no speed, no range of motion that's going either way. So then from there, you literally just reintroduce one at a time, going, well, I'm going to introduce a little bit more range, and then I'm going to introduce load to that range. And then you would say, well, I'm going to introduce a little bit of speed to that load in that range. Without getting into a full programming structure, if you can get a joint back to those three things, and then slowly reintroduce range, slowly reintroduce load into that range, and slowly reintroduce speed into all of it, then your body will be more confident moving however you want it to. Which takes me straight into point number 2, which is not just working on your weak links, but working on your mobility. Now, I've done a lot of different courses online, and I've done my certificate in personal training, and none of them talk about why stretching and mobility training is so important. If I think back to 20-year-old me, he never stretched. Was it his fault? He was never told why stretching was important. He got told to do it when he was younger, when he had Achilles issues, but he never did them. Didn't get told why it was important. Didn't get told how to properly execute them. Didn't get told that it would make a big difference in the long term. And even to this day, someone could sit back, take this clip and say, there's no science saying that stretching is necessary for improved range of motion in your joints. Like, fuck off. Like, bet this person moves like a piece of shit. Guaranteed they do. Most of the powerlifters and science-based guys that I know have their technique holding on by a thread. And then whenever they run into an issue, they're like, oh, my back's an issue. It's like, no, just like your back's the weakest link in that chain that you're not working on, dude. Understanding that we have to train joints in isolation and improve their performance in short, middle, and long ranges, which over time, you will always be stronger in a short range of motion, and you'll always be a little bit weaker in middle and much weaker in the longest range possible to contract in. As you get more mobile, the longer ranges are not as weak as your short ranges. When you start, your short range will be quite strong, and then your middle range is probably quite strong, and then like that long range really sucks, which is why you see most guys not straightening their arm on a bicep curl, because they're really weak down there because the tissue hasn't learned to lengthen and contract there, and so they avoid it. But all the guys with the biggest biceps I know, at least naturally, will always try and get their straight arm on their preachers and get the distal part of their bicep exposed to length. And so if you look at gymnasts, what do they do all the time? They only do long range of motion exercises throughout their routines. And so their body can contract everywhere and they freaking look like it. Their body has learned to use those long ranges with load and speed. That's why calisthenics and gymnastics produce the same physique over and over and over again. That doesn't mean you have to go and do calisthenics and gymnastics, but it just means that like the way that you train through full ranges of motion will impact how your body functions in the long term. If you never expose yourself to long ranges of motion, your body won't know what to do if it ever has to go there. And so in the gym, we are creating an environment where we get to explore our limitations. We get to explore the end ranges of our joints and muscles, and then slowly incorporate them back into global movement patterns that allow us to live our life more confidently, because every single joint in our body we've got confidence in. So for mobility, literally just think short range, middle range, long range movements. If you want to work on a joint or movement pattern in that way, it doesn't matter, but you can start with small range, slowly increase it out and increase the range of motion. Then you would increase the load, and then you can start to expect the speed. That's literally the whole knees over toes guide system, is that you are teaching your body to contract in longer ranges of motion, and then therefore the middle range of motion, which is where we are strongest, is a much broader spectrum. And so another video I could dive into what mobility training actually looks like, incorporating these drills into probably like a bro split, incorporating like 10-15 minutes of mobility through the hips, the shoulders and the spine, so that you can start to get an idea of what these things look like. If you want to see that, just let me know. Number 3. So I've worked with a lot of power-based athletes as well as everyday people, and I can guarantee that you are not as fit as you think. I once trained a guy who could run a sub 3-hour marathon, but he couldn't squat. He couldn't squat his body weight, his knees and hips, and actually he reminds me of me. But I'm like, how can you be such an elite runner, but you move like shit? And so if I think about what fitness and endurance and resilience means to me, I would have said that he's not that fit. I would say that he has great lung capacity and that his body has adapted to a certain stimulus for a really long time. But I had him do mobility work for 10 minutes and he was puffing and panting. So we can look at that and say, all right, not only do we need to have work in our weak links and mobility, but then we need to innovate that mobility with conditioning. Because this guy couldn't squat. I got him to hold squat stretches and he was pissing sweat and he was breathing hard. And I'm like, this is much easier than you being cardiovascularly fit, but like his muscular endurance doing different things was shit. And so like a day on the tools would have ruined him. And I'm like, can we say that person is fit? And I don't think so. But I believe that if we're going to call someone fit and resilient, we need to look at more than just like what their lungs can do, but we need to look at like how much stress and fatigue can they handle without their body falling apart as well. And so this is what CrossFit kind of did with getting people to do all different types of movement patterns. And for the most part, I love what CrossFit did because they got all different types of movements. And then they said, well, we'll work on the technique. And they probably didn't work on that enough, which is where there was a lot of kickback. But we'll work on the technique, get you strong, and then we're going to throw it into a conditioning circuit where you have to perform near max effort of your lift. Then you have to go perform this other thing that's quite complex, and then this other thing that's quite complex, and we're going to throw it all together. I reckon they were some of the fittest athletes out there. However, when they got tired and their technique wasn't up to scratch because they hadn't really explored enough of those like end ranges or had enough either side of what their technique demanded. If you've only got 1 or 2 degrees and then you get tired and you fatigue, your muscles shorten a little bit because that's your accessible range of motion, then you go to lift again and your body can't hit that same position. Like that's where injuries happen. And so like the lack of mobility training and lack of technical awareness in teaching people like, well, we are only lifting to our technical threshold. That shouldn't be taken out of context and said, oh, you need to maintain your technique. But it's like you should be strong at everything and have very diverse movement patterns available to you so that if you do get stressed, you have more available and your body knows how to handle it. But also, if you're trying to execute a certain lift where globally you might only have a few degrees of movement, like a snatch requires heaps of mobility through the entire chain. When you get tired, if you could do a shoulder because your shoulders are fatigued because that might have been the weakest link in that chain. And so if we're talking about building your engine or getting fit, we need to be like, cool, well, we need to challenge that shoulder sub-threshold most of the time so that when we are faced with this, we are not going to run into a technique breakdown and an injury because the shoulder wasn't prepared for what we're about to demand of it. And so like 80% of your training should be about getting strong. 20% max should be about like discovering how strong you have gotten from the training that you've been doing. So I believe that if you're looking at getting fit, you need to be doing lifts in a way that challenge not just your muscular system, but if you are working at like RPE 7 to 8 on a certain lift, that's still 2 to 3 reps in reserve, which is still great for hypertrophy and strength outcomes. But then if you change the movement pattern into muscles that aren't as dominant, then you can go and do other exercises that will challenge your cardiovascular system so that you can get fit while moving well, and you will build this engine that is much better than just going for a run, especially if you're doing something like a clean and jerk at like 85% and you're doing a few reps and you've spent time building up the technique for that, and then you know that you're doing 85%, you're working up to 1 or 2 reps in reserve, then you go and do some pull-ups because your back isn't overly dominated in a clean and jerk. Then you go and do some push-ups because your chest isn't overly required in either of those movements. And then together, you are learning to move well and you are learning to stay fit using complex movement patterns rather than just going for a run. And sure, like you can tack on that cardiovascular training around that too. So the biggest takeaway for building your engine is just like, get your normal training plan, try to superset more things that aren't going to impact the results that you're getting from the focus points that you have in there, but in a way that it challenges your cardiovascular system. And like, while you are working on building your mobility, working on your weak links, as you come out the other side of that, the intensity is just going to lift as you lift through more ranges of motion, as you express force in more complex movement patterns, and then you're supersetting them with other things that aren't just like focused on like maximal hypertrophy outcomes. You can get fit and resilient by throwing this stuff in and working on more skills than just like one lift that's focused on bicep hypertrophy. So for number 4 here, practice skills, get strong. A lot of people would think these are very different things, but I wanted to quickly go over why they're just two sides of the same coin. When you think of skills, what do you think? You're like, oh, cool tricks like doing a handstand or a backflip. Like, in a way, they are skills, but so is a bodyweight squat. That is a skill. For some people, they can't do a bodyweight squat and they just don't know why. Once upon a time, that was me. The guy I just referred to, that was him. Didn't have the skill set of a bodyweight squat. Whether it was the muscular strength, whether it was the nervous system not allowing the joints to move deep into those ranges of motion, it doesn't fucking matter. The skill wasn't present. And so we need to practice skills and then get strong at them. So for some people, doing a squat is impossible. For some people, they have no idea why other people can't do squats. Then they become personal trainers and just say, oh, just squat deeper, bro. Like, and I'm pretty sure we all know that. So what skills should we work on? Literally just iterations of the fundamental movement patterns. Pushing, pulling, squatting, lunging, hinging, twisting, carrying, maybe running. So if we just take one of them, we say, cool, pushing. What movements can we possibly get better at that would say that we are getting more skillful and we can also load? First one would be getting better at push-ups because that's the easiest. So start high on an incline and then work your way down till you can do push-ups. Then what? You can go on an incline and you can start to do pike push-ups, or that would lead to handstand push-ups. Or you can start to work on dips, on parallel bars, or on rings. And so you've got diverse bodyweight ability there. And you're like, okay, what else? Bench press, push press, barbell, dumbbells, doesn't matter. Jerks, strict shoulder press, and you've got these barbell movements as well. So you've got bodyweight and barbell movements that you can practice all of them, and they're all going to challenge the way that you push things. But if you got good at all of them, there's not many things that you couldn't push. There's not many ways that you could be challenged that wouldn't be pushing. So you need to look at that and look at what skills are drawn out from the fundamental movement patterns. So anything that life throws at us, we would be ready for. So that is the simple version. If you want the extended version of that talk, then let me know and I'll do another video for that as well. And that's it. So you've got 4 things that you can work on. Work on your weak links, get more mobile, build your engine on top of great foundations, and then practice skills that allow you to get strong, which is a little bit separate because practicing skills is strength and coordination, which means you're not just building the range of motion, but you have to build your confidence in your body and minds to show that your body, that you can coordinate force and organize your joints in a manner that allows you to produce force consistently so that whenever life throws you a curveball, you are prepared. And that is going to save you years of fucking around in the gym. Now, if you want clearer plans, then I would subscribe to my channel because I'm going to be diving into this for the next fucking who knows how long. Bye.